Hey, Dog Nation, I'm Brandon Adams. Welcome into Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews, where we take a look at the upcoming games of the weekend, including the Dogs, from a gambling perspective. Always a ton of fun. Of course, we'll hear from the entire Dog Nation team over the course of our time together. Dog Nation's Mike Griffith, our recruiting insider Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, who's with me here in our Dog Nation World Headquarters studios, and, of course, our good friend Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews. Dari, I was asking you before we began our taping, sounds like you feel pretty good about the slate of games here this weekend. I don't know that I'm quite as confident as you are. I've kind of talked myself into both sides of a couple of these games. Some of them I like more than others. Sounds like you're feeling pretty confident, though.
Yeah, definitely feeling a lot stronger on this week's games than last week. There's probably about half of them this week that I feel really good about.
Let me bring in Connor Riley on this for a moment. How you feel about the slate here today, Connor? Are you feeling pretty good, all things considered? I know you're trying to do like 50 things right now, but how about a little small talk here as well? You feel okay about the slate?
I really actually don't like this slate at all. I got a lot of teams I like, but I don't like the number. And based on the way, some people in the public might be going, that makes me even more cautious with this stuff. So not a huge fan of this week's slate.
So one real quick housekeeping thing, and Dari, I know you know this, and I'm sure our audience might figure this out as well. The general rule is we take the Georgia game and the total. We take every SEC versus FBS game. And if two top 25 teams are ranked, we'll take that game as well. We're generally looking to do about 8 or 9 games. This week, it was kind of hard to get up to the 8 or 9, so we had to be a little creative with some of the games that we added. But nonetheless, it should make for a fun debate over the course of the next few minutes. Before we get to any of that, though, let's provide a little bit of an update here on where things stand. Dari has been the hottest among us for the most part this season, trying to get back involved a little bit after last week. Connor actually has the best week for last week. He has a 5-3 week. Dari only 3-5 for the week. I split even, going 4-4. However, Dari's still on top of the one that matters on the season. He's at 23-19. Connor dead even, flat-footed 500 record at 21-21. BA bringing up the rear by a sizable margin here at just 17-25 for the season. I still maintain my belief that it's just as hard to go 17-25 as it is to go 25-17. So at some point in time, I'm hoping for a market correction here on this. If you've never joined us for Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews, first of all, you should know it's presented by our friends there at R.S. Andrews. Air, heating, plumbing, electric. They certainly can do all that for you in this time of year. Even though it's October, let's face it, it's still really hot outside. So I know, Dari, the phone must be ringing off the hook with folks who want to make sure that air conditioning unit is still going the way it needs to kind of get through what is still kind of a late season heat wave. I'm sure that keeps the air conditioning folks kind of busy going from house to house and tuning up a lot of these units. No doubt you're doing a lot of that right now, right?
Definitely. I mean, it's 95, 96 degrees right now, first week in October. The weather's been a little crazy, but the heat's still coming.
But
I think next week it starts to cool down a bit, so I think we'll start to get that crisp, cool football weather in there.
Boy, I hope so. But the great news is if you're still dealing with that heat outside, you can have it nice and cool on the inside with that Smiley tune-up from our friends at R.S. Andrews. They can get your system back to factory fresh specs. Go to rsandrews.com to find out more details about that. And without further ado, let's dive into Georgia and Tennessee here. Vols hosting the Dogs as a 25.5-point underdog. The way the show works is Mike Griffith will weigh in, Jeff Sintel will weigh in, Connor Riley will weigh in. We'll hear from our audience here on this a little bit too, and we'll decide what the consensus is about the game itself. And Dari will decide if he wants to go with the flow or not and be on the side of the consensus when it comes to each of these games. Mike Griffith, your thoughts on Georgia-Tennessee? Go ahead and get us started.
Georgia's at Tennessee. The last time Georgia was up at Rocky Top, it was 41-0. I don't think it's going to be that lopsided this time. I also don't think it's going to be a close game. I think Georgia wins 34-10. They don't cover this 25.5 spread.
So taking Tennessee plus the points is our buddy Mike Griffith. Jeff Sintel, do you agree?
25.5. Don't like that line for the Bulldogs, Dog Nation. I think it's probably a 21 to 24 point game. I do not think Georgia covers that spread.
So thus far, kind of a clean sweep of folks expecting Georgia to win, but expecting Tennessee to get that cover. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, my guess is they don't quite feel the same way on that. My guess is they're a little more likely to take the Dogs on this. Let's see what they said in regards to their feelings about Georgia giving 25.5. Yeah, 89%, even that sort of gives you an idea that maybe folks aren't super thrilled about Georgia trying to cover a big number here at the moment, but they do go on the side of the dogs. Connor, where do you come in on this? We got a 2-1 margin right now favoring Tennessee, keeping it closer than the experts think. Where do you come down on this?
So I hear what Jeff and Mike, and in talking to some of the other media members and sort of getting the feel where this game is, people expect this to be a close game, given the familiarity between these two programs and, maybe the mutual respect Jeremy Pruitt and Kirby Smart have for each other. However, I feel like we're neglecting one big fact here. Tennessee lost to Georgia State this year, and because of that, I just don't think that they're going to be able to keep it within 26 points. So because of that, I don't expect it to be a high-scoring game. We'll get to that later. But if Tennessee is struggling with Georgia State and they're, getting their doors beat off by a Florida team with a backup quarterback, I don't think Tennessee is going to be able to keep it close. Give me Georgia here.
All right, so let me give you some conflicting numbers in this here for a moment. Georgia just 2-5 against the spread in its last 7 at Tennessee. And just 2-5 in its last 7 against the spread. Also 2-4 in its last 6 at Tennessee against the spread. Although Georgia has covered 5 straight SEC games. However, for the first time this year on our program anyway, I'm going to go against Georgia in terms of the really big number. Even though, as Connor said, this is a team that did lose to Georgia State, I think that Kirby likes Pruitt. Certainly some of the things that he said this week makes you think that he does, kind of touting some of the work that Pruitt's doing there at Tennessee. Coaches, for the most part, defend each other. In this case, I take Kirby at his word here that he probably has a little bit of a kinship with Pruitt. Maybe he doesn't want to hang a big 30 or 40-point margin of victory on him, knowing that it can indeed be the death knell for Pruitt there in Knoxville. The other thing is, and we'll get into this more later on the show, I expect this to be a relatively low-scoring game. I think the game goes under. I think it's really hard to cover a big spread when the game itself goes under. Georgia hasn't been covering a lot lately anyway, at least so far this season. Underscores make it hard to cover a 25.5-point number. Obviously, I like Georgia to win the game, and I don't think it's going to be close at all. But if the number is 25.5, that may be just enough for Tennessee to be a bit of a live dog there at Neyland Stadium on Saturday. So I take Tennessee plus the points here, which actually puts it at 3-2 in favor of the Vols plus the points. Dari, do you want to go with the flow?
I'm not.
Okay.
I love the Dogs this week. I love them to cover. I love them in a blowout win. Tennessee's defense, their rushing defense, is ranked 65th in the nation. Georgia is going to run it down their throat, and Georgia's defense is going to create turnovers and shut Tennessee down all day long. Love the Dogs.
So let me be candid here for a moment. I'm going to speak as a fan and not someone who's trying to get a bet down. As a fan, I'm actually really happy to hear you say that because, Dari, one of the things I've noticed about doing the show with you this year is you've gone against Georgia with the point spread a couple times this year, and you've been right about that. I sort of assume you might do that again today. So the fact that you're not, I think, is interesting from a gambling perspective. It probably does make me feel a little bit better about this game overall because there have been a couple of times thus far this season where you've kind of smelled a rat and said, that may be too many points, and the game itself ended up proving you right on that. But the fact that you're as confident as you are, I think if you're a Georgia fan, you take that as pretty good news, whether you plan on betting the game or not.
Yeah, I mean, all year, you're right. I've kind of been taking the points and unsure if they were going to cover, just how the game flows were going to go. This week, though, I really like the matchup, and I really like Georgia coming off the bye to do a lot of damage against a deflated Tennessee team.
So we'll get back to a Georgia-Tennessee before we're done here today. We'll take a look at the over-under total on that. I kind of gave you a little bit of a tip-off about what I'm thinking, but we'll do more of that later on. For now, let's turn into the game that I'm really, really excited about. I am just eager to see Auburn at Florida. I grew up with this being an SEC rivalry. I'm glad to have these two teams back on the field against each other here this upcoming Saturday. I do have a pretty strong take on this game. I'm curious, though, to hear Mike Griffiths first. Mike, weigh in on the Tigers on the road against the Gators.
In another game, Auburn is at Florida, a battle of top 10 teams. It's going to be a 3:30 p.m. start. The Tigers have already gone to Texas A&M and won. I've not been overly impressed with Florida. I know the Swamp is a tough place to play, and I know that freshman quarterback Bo Nix is going to see more pressure than he's seen all year. But I also think the Auburn defense is quite effective. So I'm going to take the Tigers to win this football game 24-21 in Gainesville.
So Mike giving you a TED Talk there to finally arrive for the third consecutive week. He's taking a push. He is taking Auburn here minus the 3 points. Although it's probably worth pointing out, though, just to be completely honest, if you do some shopping here late in the week, you may see some 2.5s out there. So if you're interested in Auburn, be really careful when you shop the line and where you shop the line. You may see some 2.5s out there. Friends at my book, you'll have this obviously. But depending on which side you want to be on, shop that line to make sure you get the best line there overall. But Mike does give you Auburn minus the 3 as a push, basically, for his pick, which drives me crazy. But nonetheless, that's what he's doing. How about Jeff Sintel? Jeff, dive in there and give us your pick there as well.
I think Auburn wins outright. I think it will be a 10-point win at least for the Tigers.
So Jeff Sintel comes in there and gives his pick there as well. He's on the side of the Auburn Tigers on that one. So we got I'm going to say that Mike's on Auburn's side. Well, we got 2-0 in favor of Auburn here for right now. How about our Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers? Auburn a slight favorite on the road here. 64% of the audience does take Auburn here. So thus far, we're kind of clean sweeping on Auburn. Not a huge surprise that my audience doesn't like Florida. I've certainly ingrained that into their head over and over again. Connor, I have no idea what you're about to do here. I'm actually really interested to hear your pick. A lot of steam on Auburn here to start our discussion. Where do you kind of come in on this?
So you bring up a lot of steam on Auburn. There's way too much talk about Auburn this week, and then seemingly convincingly winning this game that makes me feel easy or confident in that pick. However, let's remember what we knew going into the season. What does Auburn do best?
They're a defensive football team.
And specifically, what on their defense is the best part?
That defensive line is really, really stout.
And as bad as Florida's quarterback play has been, what was the worst part of their offense?
That offensive line is suspect.
Florida does have a good defensive line, and Auburn's offensive line has made some improvements there, but there are still questions.
And Grantham will probably dial up some stuff on Nix.
to try and confuse a young freshman quarterback. However, I just think Auburn's going to be able to control the line of scrimmage defensively and do just enough on offense. I love the under here. It's 48 points. 3, 2.5, 3.5. I know it's a road environment. Give me Auburn here. I just think this is a bad matchup for this Florida team.
So, Dari, I'm going to tell you that I like Auburn here a lot, but I probably like them a little less than I would have thought I would have a few weeks ago. The numbers, first of all, kind of favor Auburn. They've been good against the spread recently. They've covered 6 straight against the spread. They're actually 4-2 in their last 6 SEC games against the spread, too. So Malzahn kind of getting it done there. One of the things that sometimes give me a pause are similar results in similar situations. Florida hosted LSU last year as a 1-point underdog, won that game outright. So under Dan Mullen, Florida's been here before and won. But I've just been saying this too much. That Florida is, I believe, a suspect team. They've played an easy schedule. We haven't seen that yet. It's a major step up in weight class right now against Auburn. Same thing's going to be true coming up against LSU and certainly against Georgia a couple of weeks after that. I am just of a big belief that Auburn is still the superior program to Florida. Even though Auburn's been kind of thought of as a program on its way down and Gus Malzahn on his way out, and by comparison, it almost seems in the minds of some of the media that Mullen's on his way up. I think the actual results on the field don't speak to that as much as people think they are. I still think Auburn's the better program. I know they're on the road, and I know the thing that probably gives me the most concern is just how many pats on the back they've gotten the last week. But it's just a better team. It's still the better program. I like Auburn a lot here, despite the fact that the world is going to kind of be on them. I'm going to take the Tigers. Do you want to go with the flow?
I'm not.
Okay.
I actually like Florida. I'm going to take the point. I think Florida is going to probably win this game at home. I think their defense is going to get it done in a low-scoring, ugly type of game, just enough to cover or win this game. The Florida defense, the one thing that has been good all year has been their defense, and they're getting 2 of their elite players back for this game.
Yeah.
They're getting their corner and their pass rusher back, and both those guys are going to be first-round draft picks.
It is a lot of sacks they've also produced as a defense as well, which could make things tough on Nix on Saturday. That'll be one to watch. I think it's a good game. I think it's going to be a fun game. I've said a lot about Florida over the last few months about them being a suspect. This is one of those games where they'll prove that probably one way or another. Interesting to hear at least the three of us in this room together kind of on opposite sides of this game. Makes it a fun one to watch. And, of course, we're glad to have all of you with us here as part of Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. I hope you'll check out R.S. Andrews when you have an air, a heating, a plumbing, or electrical need. You know, my favorite thing about R.S. Andrews is they show up on time. They do the work that was promised for the price that was promised. A lot of these companies that maybe don't have as sterling a reputation, they're going to show up, and you're not going to feel as good about that situation. Kind of a fly-by-night deal. You don't really know what you're getting. But with R.S. Andrews, you get confidence. You get peace of mind. It feels good to let them in your house because, as I said before, they do all the things they said they would do for the price they said they'd do them for. That's why I would ask you to check out rsandrews.com. If you've got anything like a water heater that's busted or anything like that, R.S. Andrews can help you out with that, rsandrews.com, to find out more on that. A very interesting game from a gambling perspective, although probably not the world's greatest TV product, is Vanderbilt heading to Oxford, Mississippi, to take on Ole Miss after Vanderbilt squeaked by Northern Illinois last week, and Ole Miss got the brakes beat off of it at Alabama. Where are you at on this one, Mike Griffith? Go ahead and kick us off.
Vanderbilt's at Ole Miss. Ole Miss, a 7-point favorite over the Commodores. Vanderbilt's had a rough go of it. I think things get even rougher. Ole Miss rushed for 279 yards against Alabama. They'll rush for another 280 yards against Vanderbilt and win this game convincingly, 31-14.
Boy, Mike giving you some dissertations on these picks, but he does take the Rebels there, minus the 7 points. Jeff Sintel, do you agree?
John Rice Plumlee showed the country something a little bit of that piano man, what he did against the Crimson Tide. I like Ole Miss in a big way covering that spread against Vanderbilt.
So also on the side of the favorite is Jeff Sintel with the Rebels. My guess is Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers probably do that as well. Let me see if I'm right about this. Yeah, to the tune of about 59%, they take Ole Miss here. They got kind of a clean sweep. Now, when the number's only 7 and the first 3 entities to weigh in take very little time in picking the favorite, that is, generally speaking, not always a great sign. But nonetheless, that's our case thus far. Connor, you want to weigh in on this one?
Now, John at the quarterback is a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure how this game goes.
That's not bad.
But Ole Miss played Bama last week, and their bodies got beat. So give me the doors and the points.
A little bit of a Billy Joel there from Connor Riley. Not what I expected. That's pretty good. I have to say that's pretty good from Connor Riley. A little bit of a Billy Joel Piano Man reference there at John Rice Plumlee playing quarterback for the Rebels. Numbers don't look good here for Vanderbilt for the most part. They're 0-5 against the spread in their last 5. They are 1-5 straight up in their last 6 road games. However, this has nothing to do with this game, but it is kind of a curiosity. Connor, would you ever imagine that Vanderbilt would be 13-5 in its last 18 trips to Ole Miss? Now, my guess is that dates back at least 30 years. I mean, that's got to be a long time. But 13-5 in their last 18 against Ole Miss, and 4-1 on the road against the spread in their last 5 trips to Oxford. That's too long of a trend to matter for this game. But interesting to hear Vanderbilt has had that much success against Ole Miss.
Yeah, they beat them last year. They've beaten them the last 2 years they've played Ole Miss, and while Vanderbilt hasn't always been a more talented team, I think Derek Mason knows how to sort of figure out this Ole Miss team. And our new coordinators, obviously, with Rich Rodriguez and Mike McIntyre for the 3rd straight week. I'm going to struggle with his name pronunciation. But I just, with Vanderbilt, you know, they played 2 of their losses are to Georgia and LSU. I know Northern Illinois was a tougher game than probably people expected. But I just, Ole Miss, you lose a tough game against Cal, which is a physical type of football team. You lose against Alabama last week. I think Vanderbilt's going to be able to figure it out and at the very least keep this game close, if not outright win it.
So, Dari, I have a very simple take on this, and mine's the opposite of Connor's. One of the things I think we have learned through 5 weeks of the season is that the SEC West is way better than the East. And I don't know that I would have started the season necessarily saying that. In fact, I would have told you that the 3 worst teams in the league at the beginning of the year were all in the West. As it turns out, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Mississippi State aren't very good, so we were right about that. But there are teams in the East who are worse. A couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, we were talking about Mississippi State and Kentucky. I said, Here are two teams from the opposite division, slotted similarly. Mississippi State is just better because the West is better. I feel the same way here. Ole Miss and Vanderbilt are kind of slotted within their divisions in a similar spot, but the Rebels being at least 7 points better than Vanderbilt, I feel like based on what I've seen from both these divisions, I feel like that's probably true, plus they have the benefit of playing at home. I agree with Connor. They may be a little banged up from having played against Alabama last Saturday, but the truth is this Alabama team's not quite as physical as it once was. I actually feel pretty good about the favorite here in this spot. I'm going to take Ole Miss, which actually puts the flow on the side of the Rebels. Do you want to go with the flow?
I do not. I'm going to take Vandy in the points. I think this is also a good spot to take a little money line action for Vandy to win outright. Maybe put that in a parlay as a juicer.
Wow.
I think the game's going to be exciting from a betting standpoint of watching this game. I think it's going to go back and forth. I think it's going to go late. I think Keyshawn Vaughn is going to have a big day, and I think Vandy's quarterback is going to light it up as well. The last 4 games, the Rebels have given up over 300-yard passing, and the last 2 of those were Cal and Arkansas. Not good passing offenses. I think Vandy's going to win this game.
I actually think this actually turned out to be a pretty fun game. And all of a sudden now I'm a lot more interested in this game, just hearing the varying opinions on who's going to cover that 7 point. All right, next game I want to get to is outside the SEC. It is Iowa going to Michigan. And, Dari, you've got a rule where you say never bet against Alabama. Well, I've adopted a rule now based on what I've seen this season as it involves Jim Harbaugh, and I'm kind of curious to see how many people join me on this. Let me start with Mike Griffith. Hawkeyes going into the big house, getting 3.5 points here. Mike Griffith, what do you think about Iowa versus Michigan?
The last time these teams met, Iowa beat an undefeated Michigan team. Michigan, a 3.5-point favorite. What are the guys in Vegas seeing that I'm not seeing? I'm going to take Iowa to go into the big house and beat the Michigan Wolverines 20-17 in overtime.
So he takes the Fighting Kirk Ferentzes there. Jeff Sintel, do you agree?
Ooh, Iowa, Michigan. Are you buying the early free fall for Michigan? I sure am. I like Iowa in that game.
So running from Harbaugh here, both of our Dog Nation experts at the moment. Has the Dog Nation daily audience soured on Harbaugh as well? Let's see. I'm guessing probably so. No, how about that? So the famous uniform of the Michigan Wolverines wins out. Not surprised it's a close vote. 55% do take the Wolverines here as a 3.5-point home favorite against Iowa. Connor, I took Michigan against Wisconsin the other day, and I got my brains beat out from the word go. I'm no fool. I'm not doing this again, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
I am a fool. I like Iowa. I think Iowa's going to win the Big Ten West. I think they're going to play in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship.
That's a good pick. Strong opinion.
However, I have been totally spooked by the fact that everyone and their mom are on Iowa this week. Iowa hasn't, other than Iowa State, who I'm not quite sure is that good either. They haven't really played anybody. I think Michigan, I know it's Rutgers. I think they're in the process of sort of figuring things out with Josh Gaddis. And I think they somehow find a way to win and cover this game.
Wow.
If you can find this game at 3, get it at 3,
Yeah.
3.5, I feel less good about. But for, largely just the reason of too many people are on Iowa at this point in time. I know you're probably going to pick them. I'm sure Dari is going to pick them. Give me Michigan here just simply for the fact that it seems like a lot of people are on Iowa this week.
So I am going to take Iowa. It was not as easy a decision for me as I wish that it was, because I do think there's some reasons to like Michigan here on the basis of, as Connor said, it just, sometimes the contrarian plays the right play. Michigan has turned into a bit of a contrarian play. It's partially why I went with them against Wisconsin the other day, although that ends up looking like a fool's errand. The numbers here, though, between these two teams, it's actually been really dominant in favor of Iowa. Iowa 5-1 in its last 6 against the spread versus Michigan, and 4-2 in its last 6 at Michigan when it comes to the spread here. So not only has Iowa done well against Michigan, it's also done well when playing in Ann Arbor, and that's kind of enough for me. I think the half point here looms pretty big on the Iowa side of things. I am completely turning my back on Harbaugh because he has just betrayed me every time I've tried to back him. In this case, I feel like Iowa's just got to be the right play, which does put the flow on the side of the Hawkeyes. Dari, do you want to go with the flow?
I am going with the flow. I'm taking Iowa. I love them. They've won in the last 6 in this series. Iowa has won 5 of them.
Yeah.
Right now, Iowa is the second fewest penalized team in the country. They lead the nation in fewest turnovers. They have a veteran senior quarterback. Their defense is a brick wall, and they're averaging running over 200 yards per game on the ground. They are going to destroy Michigan.
Wow.
This team is playing just like Wisconsin has been playing, and they get round 2 taste test for Harbaugh.
Boy, I love that, Dari. That is a really strong pick. And at this point in time, Dari, I'm actually fairly convinced when it comes to college football in 2019, Kirk Ferentz is just better at coaching his team than Jim Harbaugh is at his. I've tried to make the case before that Harbaugh was a good coach with the 49ers and a good coach with Stanford, but for some reason, whatever Harbaugh was then, and I won't even pretend to be an expert at being able to explain this, but whatever Harbaugh used to be coaching these previous stops, he just isn't that at Michigan anymore. I believe that Ferentz is the better coach in this game on Saturday.
I agree. I think Michigan is soft. They're getting pushed around. And this Iowa team, that's just not a good matchup for them. They're very physical. That's why I think they're going to dominate the game because they're playing better and they're coached better right now.
Let's stay in the Big Ten here for a moment. I went against Ohio State last week. They went into Lincoln. They covered a big number against the Cornhuskers. Now they're back home in the Horseshoe. They are also a big favorite once again, this time against Michigan State. The number is 20. Can the Justin Fields and this Buckeyes offense stay hot here against Sparty? Mike Griffith, start us off on this.
Michigan State is playing at Ohio State. Ohio State, a 20-point favorite. Justin Fields and the Buckeyes are on a roll. Michigan State, with a traditionally strong defense, not this time. They're going to be overwhelmed by Ohio State. Ohio State wins this game easily, 56-13 over Michigan State.
Wow, big number there from Mike Griffith. Huge score for him. Buckeyes over the Spartans. Jeff Sintel, what do you think?
Interesting game. I think it's probably one of the most interesting games of the weekend. You see the Spartans actually have a top 10 defense against Justin Fields and all that offensive fireworks. I do not think Ohio State covers that spread, but I do think they get the win.
So split decision among our scribes. Jeff Sintel leaning in the direction of Michigan State on this. Dog Nation Daily Audience going to be a little tough to pick on this one because with obviously the former UGA quarterback involved here, I'm actually kind of curious. Let me see if I can guess. Let me see if I can guess. It's less than 60%. Let me go 58% take Ohio State. Is that it? Let's see what we got here. 54% take Michigan State. How about that? So the majority of the Dog Nation Daily audience on the side of the underdog here, plus the 20 points. So they are definitely believers that Ohio State has not played much of a schedule up to this point in time. And you can decide for yourself if Michigan State makes the schedule tougher or not for the Buckeyes up to this point. So we now have a 2-1 margin in favor of Michigan State, keeping this one close. We saw a pretty ugly performance from Michigan State not too long ago against Arizona State that may cloud your judgment on this just a little bit. Connor, what do you think?
So I am very interested to see how Justin Fields looks against a tough Michigan State defense. I think it's going to be his hardest challenge to date. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State is kept in the 20s, 21, 24, 27 points. However, Michigan State's offense is terrible. They are bad. They are going to be out-athleted and out-coached by Ohio State's defense this week. I don't think they score a touchdown. I don't think they can kick a field goal. I think they get shut out. And because of that, I feel pretty comfortable taking the Buckeyes this week. I just think Ohio State, as good as Ohio State's offense has been, I actually think their defense has been better.
Yeah.
So because of that, give me the Buckeyes defense.
Yeah, not to turn this into a regular show, but, Jeffrey Okudah, the Ohio State safety, that was a player that I really wanted Georgia to get in the recruiting world, a couple years ago. And, boy, he has been so impressive. Couple interceptions this past Saturday against Nebraska. That Buckeyes defense is tough. There are some conflicting numbers here for this game. First of all, Michigan State is 4-1 its last 5 road games against the spread. But, man, they have done terrible against Ohio State. They're just 2-7 their last 9 overall, Michigan State is against the spread. And 3-12 straight up in their last 15 against Ohio State. They're also, the Spartans are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games against Big Ten competition. So not doing well against the spread versus Big Ten teams, not doing well overall. A really rough stretch straight up against Ohio State, which is probably not that big of a surprise. However, part of me just wants to say too much too soon for Ohio State. It's been an easy cakewalk coast to the start of the year. It may be because Ohio State's one of the elite teams in the country, or it could just simply be that it's time for them to get a bit of a test. Now, playing at home helps the Buckeyes here. I don't feel great about my pick on this, and I've been wrong about Ohio State now twice already this year going against them. They've covered both times. Maybe I'm doomed to fail again. I don't have a lot of bass in my voice to say this, but Dari, I'll take Michigan State plus the 20 here. I'll take the Spartans, and I guess by a 3-2 margin, that puts me with the flow and taking Sparty. Do you want to go with the flow?
I'm not. I'm going to take Ohio State. I think they're barely going to cover this game. They're by far the better complete team. Look at the numbers. Justin Fields, 16 passing touchdowns, no interceptions, and 7 rushing touchdowns. Ohio State's running attack is averaging over 200 yards on the ground without even breaking a sweat. They really haven't played anybody. This is their first defense, and Mark D'Antoni knows how to get more out of his players for a game like this. I think it'll be close in the first half, but I think Ohio State playing at home is going to stretch that lead and do just enough to cover.
Yeah, I really hate my pick on this. I really hate my pick. I've lost with Ohio State twice already this year. You make a strong case, Dari. Connor, you do as well. I'm sticking with Sparty on this one, but boy, I don't like my pick here. At some point in time, Ohio State's got to come back to earth a little bit, though. So we shall see how that goes. And let me go finally, before we get back to Georgia in a moment, let me do 2 more games before we get there. First of all, I thought it'd be fun this week to take a look at a couple of ranked teams as road favorites. Just kind of give us enough games to kind of pick and have some fun with. How about the Longhorns going to Morgantown? I've got this as Texas minus 11.5 on the road. Mike Griffith, you want to weigh in here on the Horns and the Nears?
Texas is at West Virginia. Texas is an 11.5-point favorite. That might seem like a lot, but West Virginia is not a very good football team. They've fallen fast and they've fallen hard. Texas wins this game easily, 34-13 in West Virginia.
So he takes Texas there against on the road there at West Virginia, Big 12 showdown here. Jeff Sintel, our Dog Nation recruiting insider, do you agree?
Ooh, I'm going to take West Virginia in the points. I think West Virginia could beat that game, could beat them in that game. There's always, if you saw Chris Fallica's tweet this week, somebody in the top 15 always loses in the first week of October. I think that could be Texas this week.
That's a pretty bold underdog pick from Jeff there. Pretty good job. So split decision among the riders. Mike takes Texas. Jeff takes West Virginia. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, I'm assuming they're on the side of the favorite here. Let's find out. Yes, 74% do take Texas. So by a 2-1 margin, we're on the Longhorns for now. Connor Riley, I'm curious of your pick on this. Go ahead and give yourself a chance to weigh in.
So, I'm not too crazy about this West Virginia team. They struggled with James Madison earlier in the year. They did look impressive beating NC State. They did beat Kansas, but it's Kansas. I really like Sam Etlinger. I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in college football. This Texas team, they've taken care of business when they need to. I know West Virginia is a tough place to play, and they've had some struggles with West Virginia in recent years. They lost at home to them last year. But with all that said, give me the Horns.
So I told you before, I'm interested in similar situations, and Texas found itself in a similar situation to this last year. They're 11.5-point favorite here on the road. They were 15.5-point favorite last year at Kansas. They lost that game outright. So that's kind of a spot where Texas hasn't shown up before. But I am not a believer in this West Virginia team really at all. Now, the recent win against North Carolina State changes that maybe a little bit. But, this is a West Virginia team that were blown out badly as only a 2-touchdown underdog at Missouri back on September the 7th. So this is a West Virginia team I just don't believe in. I think Texas knows, first of all, it should have the confidence that it can beat Oklahoma because it has. And I think it knows that it's certainly playing for something because of how close it kept the LSU game not all that long ago. I think Texas got its entire season in front of it here, which I think ought to be enough to stay focused on the road at West Virginia, which can be a tough place to play, but this is not a good West Virginia team, and Texas got a lot at stake here. I don't think 11.5 is too much to ask there in that regard. I take the Texas Longhorns, and that puts the flow on the side of the horns. Dari, do you want to go with the flow with the road favorite?
I'm not.
Wow.
I like West Virginia at home. They're coming off a bye. I think they're going to do just enough to keep this game close. They've covered 5 of their last 8 games when playing an opponent with a winning record. I think West Virginia will do just enough to cover that 11.5.
Give me that number again about West Virginia versus teams with a winning record.
5 out of their last 8.
Okay, it's not bad. That's not bad. That's a pretty good. That's a pretty good job, all things considered. So Dari going with the home team getting points at home. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do that game here this week. I thought it would make for a kind of a fun divide, and it actually worked out pretty well with it. I thought it would. Same thing may be true here with Washington going to Stanford, a place they've got a lot of history, and a lot of it has not been good. They are 14.5-point favorites this time, though. Mike Griffith and the Pac-12, which side are you going to be on?
Washington's at Stanford. The Huskies a 14.5-point favorite. Remember when Stanford was a good football program? It's been a while. I'm going to take the Huskies. They're on a roll. They're going to beat Stanford 37-17.
So Mike takes the Washington Huskies there. UW getting it done on the farm. Jeff Sintel, what do you think?
Ooh, Jacob Eason, Davis Mills, 2 names that ring bells for a lot of Dog Nation and a lot of Bulldog fans. I like Stanford with those points. Give me those points and I'll take Stanford.
This is the most disagreement we've seen from Jeff and Mike in their picks all season long. They've been, and they don't do them at the same time, in the same place, but normally they've been kind of a little bit more in unison. This week, though, a lot of divide amongst them. I think it actually makes that pretty fun. So we've got a split decision thus far. Dog Nation Daily audience, they like Eason. My guess is they probably like Eason here in this game on Saturday. Yeah, that's not a surprise. 83% seems about right. 14.5, not too much for them. Huskies against Stanford. But as I said before, I'll give you the numbers in a moment. This has not been a good spot for Washington now for quite some time. Connor, you obviously know the Pac-12. You love this league. What do you think about this game?
So it's not a secret that I am an appreciator of the Stanford football program. This is a tough season for them. They struggled against Oregon State last week. They got blown out by USC. They really were physically manhandled against Oregon. That being said, this game is at home. In 2017, Washington was a better team, a more talented team. Stanford found a way to win that game. Notre Dame came in there, was a better, more talented team in 2017. Stanford found a way to win that game. I know Stanford struggles to run the ball. KJ Costello is probably not going to play. It's probably going to be Davis Mills at quarterback. But he showed me some stuff last week, 3 touchdowns, and he caught one as well. I kind of like Stanford here. I think they've got a chance to win this game.
Wow.
Washington, while yes, they covered a week ago, didn't really impress me all that much against a USC team that was playing.
Not great numbers for Eason.
Not great numbers for Eason. He's kind of hot and cold. He was great at BYU, and then he sort of struggled against Cal and against USC last week. So because of that, give me Stanford with the points, and if you're willing to stay up and watch this, I feel like this might be the game where a top 15 team goes down.
That's fun to think about. Here are some numbers I was not aware of. Washington has played terrible both at Stanford and against Stanford overall. They're just 3-8 straight up in their last 11 versus Stanford. So Stanford's dominated this series, and the Cardinal have won their last 5. They're on the farm against the Huskies. So this has been a series dominated by Stanford, but I actually think that works in Washington's favor here this weekend because I think it makes it difficult for Washington to look ahead in this spot. I feel a lot about Washington the way that I did about Texas. They've got something to play for, and that's something ought to keep them motivated. I think that Peterson's a good game coach, so you got no beef there with how the Huskies probably perform in this game, and they've been hot as of late. They're 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 contests. So playing well as of late, focused against Stanford because this is an opponent that's been rough on them, and a team that's very much in national conversations right now. That's enough to keep them motivated. 14.5 is a lot. That half point could potentially loom large here because of how much of a key number the 14 typically is. But I actually feel okay about taking Washington here in this spot, and that puts the flow on the side of the Huskies. Once again, by a 3-2 margin. We've had more split decisions on this show this week than any of the other shows I think we've done to this point in time. So, Dari, the Huskies, UW by a narrow margin. They represent the flow. Do you want to go with the flow?
I am going to go with the flow.
Okay.
Not really confident in this pick with the where the number's at on the point spread. But I'm going to take the Huskies. just a few things to note. The Huskies have failed to cover 4 of their last 5 games. They've also failed to cover 8 of their last 11 road games. On the flip side, Stanford is 0-4 in their last 4 games against the spread against a winning opponent.
Wow.
I'm going to take Washington, but I'm not really confident in this.
Should be a very interesting one to watch, and I thought it might be fun to pick some of these road favorite games because I thought we might get a little bit of a divide, and we've indeed done that. Let me go back to Georgia, Tennessee before we wrap up our program. Of course, you're watching Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews, air, heating, plumbing, electric, all those major systems in your house. R.S. Andrews, they are experts at getting those fixed for you. As we said before, whether it be the air conditioning unit that you still need this time of year, certainly R.S. Andrews can do good work for you on that. They can get your system back to factory's fresh specs. Check them out online for more details on that. Go to rsandrews.com. Story after story, they've been delivering smiles, and they can deliver a smile for you as well, but you got to check them out online at rsandrews.com. All right, it's Georgia, Tennessee again. It's the total number of points. It's set at 51.5, and for those who maybe haven't bet an over-under before, you can either say that the total points for both these teams will exceed 51.5, or if you want to go under, it's less than 51.5 points. Mike Griffith, let me start with you. The 51.5. Which side are you on this, Mike?
Looking at the over-under for Tennessee and Georgia, it's at 51 points. I'm going to take the under. I think these coaches, Pruitt and Smart, know one another quite well. I think they'll both play it close to the vest. This will not be a very entertaining game in the second half. The fans will be emptying out, and I think even some of the Georgia fans will leave early to beat the traffic, knowing that the Bulldogs are in full control, but this game goes under the over-under of 51.
So Mike takes the under, and it's actually kind of a minor miracle. If we're scoring at home, I believe this is the first time all year we've actually gotten Mike to make an over-under pick as a part of our show, so I feel like we're trending in the right direction just on that point alone, but Mike does go under. Jeff Sintel, do you agree?
Going under. I see something like a 45-point combined total between the two teams. That means they're going under.
Jeff Sintel also goes under as well. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, fans typically like points. Do they believe this game has a lot of them? I'm going to say no. No, I'm wrong. Wrong by a wide margin. 76% of the audience takes the over here. They expect to see an explosive, I'm assuming, Georgia offense against Tennessee on Saturday. They go over the 51.5, so we're 2-1 in favor of the under for right now. Connor Riley, what do you think?
In Georgia's three of their first 4 games this year, they've hit the under.
Yeah.
I don't think Tennessee's going to be able to score a lot. I think this defense is going to come out and play well. Played very well against Notre Dame, and it was hard luck to really even give up the 17 points that they did surrender in that game. Georgia, I don't think they're going to run up the score on Tennessee here because I think Kirby Smart likes the idea of trying to keep Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee for as long as he can. So I think they're going to win by 4 touchdowns, but I think the final score is going to be something like 38-10 or 35-7.
So that's really interesting. I like the under here, Dari, as well. Connor mentioned 3 or 4 unders for Georgia this season. It's actually 4 of their last 5, if you want to look at the numbers there at OddsShark on that. It's a very stingy Georgia defense. I'm saying dating back to last season. It's a very stingy Georgia defense. They're just yielding 10 points a game right now. They were good defensively against Notre Dame. The Tennessee offense is obviously a lot worse than that. It's part of the reason why I like Tennessee to at least cover, because I think it's hard to cover 25.5 point number when the game itself goes under. But I feel like this one is heading towards an under here. This is just not a Georgia team right now that's going over in these games. At least it seems like as of late. So I'm going to go under here. That puts the flow on the side of under. Do you want to go with the flow?
Hell no. I'm going over.
Wow.
Georgia's going to blow them out. The defense is going to be responsible for 2 or 3 touchdowns from turnovers from Tennessee's offense. I like a complete domination on both sides of the ball for Georgia in this game.
Well, Dari, I'll tell you this. You've at least gotten me a lot more excited about Georgia, Tennessee than I probably was before this show began. So I'm at least thinking about that and can't wait to see how all these picks work out this weekend. To those of you who kind of play along with us while you're watching and listening to the show, we appreciate you letting us kind of narrate this experience for you, too. Good luck with the picks that you make. And for Dari, Connor, Jeff, Mike, everybody else, good luck with your picks there as well. Dari, hope you enjoy these games this weekend, and we'll look forward to chatting with you about those again very soon.
Yeah, definitely. Go Dogs. Let's blow them out.
That's good stuff there from Dari Payro. Of course, we appreciate all of you being a part of our RS Andrews Go With The Flow here as well. Check them out online at rsandrews.com. When you have any kind of need, air, heating, plumbing, electric, anything like that, you hear Dari. They're good folks that love talking college football and having a good time, and that's one of the reasons why we love recommending RS Andrews, and you'll like them yourself. So check them out, rsandrews.com. Y'all enjoy the games this weekend. We will see you back here again next week at the same time for Go With The Flow, presented by RS Andrews. We'll talk to you then.